Good afternoon and welcome to the Town of Old's Council meeting for today, January 10th, and Happy New Year to everyone. I'll call the meeting to order now at 1:03 p.m. and ask for added items. Councillor Walsh and then Councillor Wilson on this side.
Okay.
Is there somebody on that side too? Okay.
Yeah, I just like an update on the motion made at the last PNP meeting for a request on the logistics of implementing a rapid antigen test at our facilities. That's one. And the second one, I'm actually asking for item C and correspondence and information to be removed. I feel it contravenes our.
Sorry, just one moment, please. An update for item. I didn't quite hear you. Is your mic on?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, an update of the motion made at the PNP meeting, December 6th.
I don't believe we have an update to this. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Point of order.
Thank you.
PNP, your follow-up would have to be at a PNP meeting, Councillor Walsh.
No, that was a motion made to send to council
What was the motion, sorry?
to look at implementing a rapid antigen test at our facilities. And that was a motion made to bring it to council.
Did we have it?
Yes, can I speak to
Mr.
that?
Merritt,
Yes, yeah, there was a request to bring it to a future council. We're planning to bring it to a future council, but not this council meeting here. We need to get some more information. So we'll not be prepared to speak to it today.
Okay, no, that's what I was asking is an update on that one. And the second one, I believe we should remove item C from the correspondence and information. On page 35, I guess I had.
it's a letter. It's a public letter. How could I remove it?
Well, and the reason I think we're going to commit to transparency and inclusiveness of process. We received a number of letters out of that process, but probably would be more appropriate. Some of them are the thank you to council for allowing people to speak at that meeting. There was even one with an apology. They were emails, these weren't letters. This is an
Councillor
email.
Walsh, point of order from our legislative clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Walsh, I don't know what correspondence you're speaking of because everything that we've received has been put forward regarding the REP from citizens. If they've made comments on Facebook saying thank you, I can't include that because it didn't come directly to us, if that's what you're inferring.
Not inferring. I received emails from these people, as did the mayor, at my town email address.
Did you forward them so I could include them?
Forwarded them to administration. Did you?
I didn't, but I'm saying,
If you'd like to provide them to me, I can confirm when they came forward.
Could provide them as well.
but I'm saying this is not a letter. This is a response to a third-party news article. What they're saying. It's not, typically we look at correspondence as letters of accommodation, people who are, this is not correspondence. This was from an email sent to everybody.
I'd go to Mr. Merritt and then I will have to refer to all council to vote on removal of this.
We typically present any correspondence that goes to all council, including the mayor, to it as correspondence. So unless there is something untoward about what is being introduced in that letter. This just seemed to be a response to council in regards to the REP program, and therefore it was added to the agenda. We will have to be much more careful and have a discussion with council in regards to which letters are going to, or which correspondences will be going forward in the future. Because this one seemed to have met all the tests of being valid.
I'm not questioning the validity of it. I'm just questioning the transparency of it. When we get a number of emails And now that we know we got, I guess, all 7 of us forward the word at the same time, an email that comes to us. I mean, the speakers at the PMP sent thank you letters through email, did they not?
Letters that we got, Mayor, if I may speak, the letters we got and the correspondence, we did basically include to basically, we were in part of the PMP agenda. Follow-up letters, we do not necessarily respond to because we are still following up, as I indicated to Councillor Walsh in his previous request in regards to the REP program. So we're still in the process of basically addressing. So that's not typically what we do, is respond to follow-up letters in this fashion. This was a new letter on the topic, and it seemed to meet all the points that correspondence will require. I will talk to the legislative clerk and review our policies, but I'm pretty much sure that that met the test of all of our correspondence requirements.
Okay. No, I am gonna agree that we probably would need to look at criteria for correspondence, because a personal opinion really is not a place for correspondence on the agenda, in my opinion.
Well, in all due fairness, because there's 7 people and you're expressing your opinion, I would then ask the council around the table how they feel, whether they would like to have it left on the agenda or removed. Did you have a question, Councilor Bratz?
No, but I do have a comment in regards to this. I actually received a phone call yesterday in regards to this particular letter from an individual. And I do believe that we need to hear both sides of the story. And I think that it was very good that we did get responses due to our December 6th PNP meeting from the individuals who presented. But this is the opposite side of that presentation. And I believe that both sides of this issue need to be heard loud and clear. And I saw nothing wrong with this letter. Although I know that there were other responses from those individuals looking for direction, but as Mr. Merritt's indicated, we have not yet given them direction. So I think that it as is. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Merritt?
Yeah, I think, Mayor, might be good just to put the situation to a vote to see if council wishes to remove it or not, and then we all be given direction based on that vote.
Just from what I read, I understood that the person was away and couldn't make it to the council. So in what you're saying, there's 2 sides to a story. So this was just the other side that never got to be heard, and they couldn't be at the meeting. But I will ask Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'm going to go here and have a conversation with this, because Councillor Walsh brings up a really good point. We're not a media outlet. It's not our job to make sure that the stories are told. If we have a policy on correspondence, that we receive correspondence, that correspondence is then put into our minutes, then all correspondence we receive must go through that same process and get in here. Picking out a piece of correspondence because it supports this council's position on the REP program doesn't seem transparent, just to use a word that Councillor Walsh had used, when we have received many more letters and correspondence in contradiction to this particular letter. So either we include all letters that we receive, or we do not include all letters we receive, but we can't cherry pick letters and put ones in there that support our position or not. So I think that, first of all, I'd like to know what the policy is, because I don't know what the specific policy is or rules. You had mentioned, or CEO Merritt had mentioned that there's a process or a checkbox list or whatever you want to call it for correspondence to be included in the minutes. I don't know what that is. It seems like others in here don't know what that specific process is. And I understand people's reasoning for cherry picking a letter and saying this letter supports our process, let's put it in here, or it's not the vocal process that no, I'm not using the right word. It's not the very vocal opinion that we've been hearing, right? So we want to hear both sides for sure, but it's not our job to do that. Our job is to post correspondence that we receive. And I agree with Councillor Walsh that we cannot pick and choose which correspondence we are going to follow up on in putting in our minutes.
Councillor Cummings, CEO Merritt.
Again, from the CEO's perspective and as well as the legislative clerk, we don't cherry pick. We basically look at what believe people want to communicate, and if it's to all council, we basically publicize it, much we did to the first two correspondence that came in I believe October in regards to the REP program. We presented, they came into us, we presented them to council. There was no counter letters. It's just, this is what people are expressing. We believed it was appropriate to submit that, and it's not about the media. It's about what people are expressing. So yeah, possibly maybe the P&P session coming up in February. We do have quite a few policies, 60 plus policies. It's hard to go through each and every one of them, but there is a policy in regards to correspondence, and we will possibly have a good discussion then.
Thank you. I believe that we should still put this to a vote. Who put the motion on the floor? I suggested it. That's correct. I believe that the discussions come around the table to remove item C on page 35, correspondence and information. And at this time, we all have some good points here, and I do agree we need some policy around this for sure. There needs to be some policy around a lot of things on our agenda. And this council is going to have to revisit that deeply. But right now, today, this is our agenda. So if any, may I get a motion from the floor, please? And we can vote accordingly.
I can move that, but we're not in council meeting yet. I'm just,
I called it to order.
okay. Yeah, I'll move that C correspondence be removed from the agenda based on, it's just not, it's not a balanced presentation. I agree. It's just, it paints one side and it creates that perception that we're choosing sides. It just, this community can become divided quite quick, and we should be working towards unity, not division. So that would be the reason. I don't dismiss the lady's position. It's her opinion. So I have
Point of order. I had spoken to the situation, and I thought the issue was to put this to a motion, get a motion, because you would basically close discussion on it. And I did explain that we are very careful in regards to correspondence coming in to make sure it is appropriate.
I do agree. This is on the floor. Councillor Walsh is saying he's putting it, that doesn't, your motion is not clear.
remove item C from the correspondence and information.
We've had talk around it and we agree that we need policy, but at this point, this is what's on the floor. So the motion is that page 35, correspondence and information, item number C be removed. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is denied. Now, could you please, Councillor Walsh, with regards to the other item that you put on the table with regards to REP, Restrictions Exemption Program, is that it? That's all you said?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I
CEO.
believe I addressed this to
Yeah.
Councillor Walsh's satisfaction, saying that it will be brought forth to a new council meeting, but not this council meeting.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody's comments around this table. And this council does have some homework to do. So that brings us back to added items now, completed, and adoption of the agenda, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Wilson, you had a added item. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had two items for consideration. One is I would like to request a little bit of an update on the disposal plan for the various assets that we have, basically that are no longer being used since the new ops center was built. I know there's a recent listing for the old fire hall, so I would just appreciate a very brief update on the disposal plan and how those sales are proceeding. And I'm also interested in any learnings that we had from the posting through the auction process for the 132 acre parcel. And again, just looking for learnings there. And my last item would be if we could have, yes, 2, 3, yes. And then a brief, just obtain some clarity from administration on the town office holiday hours. And I realize that's in the past, but I would just like to get an idea on how that, I don't know if that's a policy, how that decision was made though, and consideration for customer service levels and cost, if any, to the town and residents, and whether that factors into customer service levels or the service levels at all. So.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Those items that you are placing on the agenda, I'm not certain they could be answered at this time. However, we can certainly add them to the agenda, but administration typically would need time to get that information. So I would ask CEO Merritt if any of these for sure you could not speak to at this time.
I think we probably could speak to most of them. I'm not quite aware what the 132 acre one is about specifically, but typically we do get a request in advance to put agenda items on. This is not typically that we just put a bunch of new items on, especially for information requests, because it could prolong the meetings quite significantly. And as the mayor indicated, it is good to be able to do some research to be able to prepare those answers in advance and have them ready for yourselves and the public. So that would be a request into the future. So if you want to put those in as new business items, we'll do our best to answer once we can, Councillor. But again, I would certainly request more time to basically prepare into the future. Typically an email or a phone call can get it on, so we will put it on the agenda.
And that is exactly why I like to have a motion for added items, ladies and gentlemen, because there's usually discussion to some of them and they need to be shared around the table. So patients, number 1 was update on the plan for disposal on assets. Is that correct?
Correct.
And 2, I got posting.
Well, I think in early December, we had posted the 132 acre parcel, I believe it was north of town, on an auction website. And I'm just curious what the learnings were and what the response was.
We'll just hand that over to Sheena prior to adding it to the agenda if we can deal with it.
I was just going to note that that is not Town of Old's lands. It wasn't done through the Town of Old's.
We're down to 2 items. So the second item would be town office hours and
Yeah, just the holiday hours
holiday hours.
and customer service levels, how that process evolved, consideration for customer service and cost.
Thank you very much. So those 2 items are now clear for the agenda. I guess I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And I would appreciate if council, if we do know we have several items we'd like to add, please contact myself as mayor or administration or Marcy, and we could be prepared for answers for you and the reasons why, and let you make the final choice. So thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. All those, we voted on that? Yeah. Those are for the added items. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Happy New Year. Now we're going to adopt the agenda as amended. Motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that we adopt the agenda for Monday, January 10th as amended.
All those in favor? That is carried. Very good. All right, we have the adoption of the previous minutes now. item 2A, regular council meeting dated December 13, 2021. Our CAO is going to provide comments on an item presented. Is that correct? Yeah. We're good to go then. Okay, very good. I gave you the opportunity. Motion, please. This side. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll make the motion to adopt regular council meeting minutes from December 13th, 2021.
Are there any further questions or comments? Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I thought I saw him.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dole. I just have one correction for the minutes, and that is on page 7 under my report. It says Mountain View Seniors Housing Board and Alberta Health Services Regional Meeting. It wasn't the Alberta Health Services Regional Meeting, it was a Central Alberta ASHA meeting, that is ASCHA. For the legislative clerk to just make a correction, and I apologize for not getting back to the legislative clerk earlier with regards to this correction.
And that's through Mount View Seniors Housing. Is that what you were saying?
I attended as the chairman of the Mountain View Seniors Housing Board, but this was a meeting of the Central Alberta ASHA.
Thank you. Any noted? Any further comments or questions? Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're going to move on to our presentations and delegations at this point. This is item 3A, delegation, Alberta Regional Rail. Mr. Thomas Fryer with Alberta Regional Rail will be participating virtually with us. And who would like to introduce? Other than that, he's in our waiting room. Okay, thank you. The floor is his.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Would you like me to share my screen, or will CAO be conducting the presentation?
Easier, yeah, there it is. Yours is on there, but we also have one as well.
Okay. Okay, so my name is Thomas Fryer. I'm a resident in Calgary, and I have a very strong interest in implementing regional rail in the Calgary-Edmonton corridor. I'm going to give the presentation today. If you could turn to the next slide, please. So a quick overview of what I'm going to present. Why do people travel? The current trends in the corridor. Why regional rail? And what the alternatives are to building regional rail. And then what the plan is for Alberta Regional Rail, with some examples in North America at the end. Next slide, please. So why do people travel? We travel for work, business meetings, leisure, sporting events and game days, and for social reasons, to meet with family and friends. Although a lot of travel has been curtailed during the coronavirus pandemic, post-pandemic, people will still travel. Maybe not as much as before, as a number of people will be able to work from home. However, there will always be meetings and other collaborative exercises to engage in, and there'll be game days and other events to participate in. A passenger rail service that is fast, efficient, reliable, and safe allows parents to work in the big city and allows kids to ride their bikes on the street, bringing the rural communities closer to the big cities. Next slide, please. These are the latest numbers from the annual average daily traffic counts in 2019 for the QE2. In the section south of Red Deer, there are a minimum of over 31,000 vehicles a day, which is a 20% increase from 2010 and a 36% increase from 2005. In the section north of Red Deer, there was a minimum of almost 27,500 vehicles a day, which is a 25% increase from 2010 and a 43% increase from 2005. In total, almost 52,000 vehicles a day travel through Red Deer. Being a majority two-lane highway, when there is a collision, one lane is blocked, leading to severe journey delays. Sometimes the highway is completely closed in one or both directions. In winter, there are increased driving hazards that include ice, snow, and blizzards. When driving in the QE2 or in winter months, you will regularly see vehicles in the ditch and central divider. With a total of over 106,000 vehicles a day into Calgary and a total of over 112,000 vehicles a day into Edmonton, When the QE2 gets into Calgary and Edmonton, the number of vehicles becomes so great that traffic is reduced to a crawl. A journey that would take about 30 minutes in free-flowing traffic can take an hour or more. Next slide, please. Travel within the Calgary-Edmonton corridor is only going to increase. Current highway capacity has reached its limit in some areas and will soon reach capacity in others. Something will need to be done. Next slide, please. So why regional rail? High speed is not a prerequisite. There will be multiple stops along the way as the aim is to serve all the towns and cities in the Calgary-Edmonton corridor. The aim is to use the Canadian Pacific right-of-way as this passes through the principal towns and communities, towns and cities in the Calgary-Edmonton corridor. This is the advantage of intensifying this use of this existing transportation corridor. This will make it cheaper to construct as land does not need to be purchased and a significant amount of the required infrastructure is already in place. The goal of passenger rail is to take cars off the road, leading to lower congestion levels. Also, as passenger rail has the ability to take cars off the road, the need for highway expansions is reduced or delayed many years. Next slide, please. People who switch from a car to a train would benefit from various reasons. Cost savings, as residents would no longer need a car and no longer need to pay for car insurance, or they'd be driving their car a lot less fuel and less wear and tear. Time savings. The maximum speed limit on the QE2 is 110 kilometers an hour. However, a regional train could reach speeds of 180 kilometers an hour, even within built-up areas, where cars can be limited to 50 kilometers an hour. Higher productivity. What can we legally do in a car? All we can legally do is drive. What can we do on a train? You can read, send emails, eat and drink, and just relax and rest. We can do so much more on a train than we can in a car. That makes it a far more productive form of transportation. The fact that we can relax and recharge also makes passenger rail a far less stressful form of transportation. Next slide, please. Additional benefits include new transportation options. No longer would residents be reliant on their cars or on other people that have cars. With fewer cars on the roads, the roadways within municipalities become more inviting to cyclists and pedestrians. Rail has by far the lowest emissions of any of the motorized mass transit options. And with use of hydrogen fuel cells, will be a zero-emission form of transportation. By bringing the rural communities closer to the big cities, rail can promote alternative living employment choices for residents. The young would no longer feel the need to leave in order to work in the big city, and those that are older or that have health conditions could also stay in their communities, as the medical appointment would only be a short train ride away. There are also those that cannot or do not drive. They would no longer be reliant on others to get them where they need to go, including those who cannot drive because of age or disability. Regional rail would provide access to affordable transit that would cover the entire region, not just for people to get to Calgary and Edmonton, but for a student to get to Olds College, Red Deer Polytechnic University, or Burman University, a patient to go for a medical appointment, or for somebody to meet friends in the next town. Next slide, please. Passenger rail enables people to take trips they would not normally take. A family trip to a local tourist attraction, a day trip just to get away for a while. When the weather is cold and nasty, a person will likely decide they don't want to risk white knuckling it on the QE2. Also, when a person maybe been feeling a bit bored and just wants to get away for a while, they could just hop on a train. With regional rail, destinations within the corridor will become more accessible, as well as the various tourist attractions in Calgary and Edmonton becoming more accessible to residents in the corridor. The various tourist attractions within the corridor become accessible to all the residents in the corridor, whether it be a pop concert at Rogers Arena or a local band at a bar in Olds. As well as the year-round attractions, there are also seasonal attractions, Stampede in Calgary and K-Days in Edmonton. There are also sporting events, rodeos, and powwows that occur throughout the corridor. During the Christmas season, a number of towns and cities put on special light displays, a festival of lights. With regional rail, additional or special trains can be put on to accommodate these events. Battle of Alberta trains, Christmas trains. As well as getting people to a destination, the train can also be the destination. For example, the Rocky Mountaineer. With the regional rail system, there are various types of special trains that can be put on, with either special consist of particular locomotives or cars, special lunch and or dinner trains that showcase local produce, night trains for stargazing, sunset sunrise trains with visitors put up in local hotels. Regional rail can also provide a safe ride home. You can have a few drinks with family and friends in the next town and catch the train home. You can watch your favorite sports team play and win in the big city, make a night of it, and safely get home. Next slide, please. One alternative is busing, but it's really only a short-term solution that would require dedicated bus lanes in the longer term. A relevant example that is comparable to population size and density and geography and climate is the Flatiron Flyer between Boulder and Denver, a total distance of 47 kilometers and multiple communities served along the route. Bus services started in 2016 with the purchase of 59 buses, with the ultimate goal being passenger rail service. 32 kilometers of high occupancy toll lanes has recently been completed for a total cost of just under $900 million US, or 14.5 to 25.7 million per lane kilometer. When the Fast Tracks project was authorized in 2004, commuter rail services between Boulder and Denver were expected to start by 2025. When the first phase of the high occupancy toll lanes were completed, that date was pushed back to 2044. With the high occupancy vehicle lanes now completed, there is no official date as to when commuter rail services will be introduced between Boulder and Denver. But a new passenger rail initiative has been introduced called Front Range Passenger Rail. This proposal envisages a passenger rail service from Pueblo in the south through Denver and onto Fort Collins in the north, utilizing BNSF and Union Pacific right-of-ways and stopping at all the communities along the way. Next slide, please. The other alternative would just be to build more roads. People think that it's cheap to build a road. These cost estimates for highway construction come from the 2006 US Federal Highways Association and have been converted into kilometers and Canadian dollars. For an example close to home, the southwest portion of the Calgary Ring Road currently under construction is estimated to cost at least $7.5 million per lane kilometer. And it's important to remember that a road is at least 2 lanes, one in each direction. With highways, there isn't just the cost of construction, there are also maintenance costs. Plowing and sanding in the winter, pothole repairs and other wear maintenance in the summer. So are roads really the least expensive option? Next slide, please. The aim of Alberta Regional Rail is to establish a passenger rail network in the Calgary-Edmonton corridor, connecting all the towns and cities, providing an integrated transportation network. Using the existing Canadian Pacific right-of-way and upgrading the track to allow higher speeds and increased number of trains to provide a frequent, fast, reliable, efficient, sustainable, and safe mode of transportation. Building stations within the urban areas in order to enhance the communities and connect with the local transportation infrastructure, creating an integrated transportation network through transit-orientated developments. Next slide, please. In order to use the existing right-of-way, Alberta Regional Rail would use CFR-compliant freight-compatible rolling stock, similar to what is used on Via Rail and the GO trains and the West Coast Express between Mission and Vancouver. Rough cost estimates based off the Calgary-Bow Valley Mass Transit Feasibility Study 2019 would suggest that twinning the existing line would cost less than $7 million per kilometer. A complete station would cost about $25 million. For a comparison, a twin line has a greater capacity than a 4-lane highway, which, as mentioned previously, can cost $7.5 million per lane kilometer, making passenger rail a quarter or less the cost of the equivalent highway and far more economical than installing high-occupancy vehicle lanes. In order to create a fast and safe passenger rail system, at-grade crossings would need to be altered by means of constructing overbridges for vehicular traffic. The ideal funding source would be a public-private partnership model, utilizing the Alberta Community Transit Fund, the New Building Canada Fund, and the Canadian Infrastructure Bank. Next slide, please. Ridership in the Calgary-Edmonton corridor can be estimated to be at least 5,000 passengers per day, and there are many examples of similar passenger rail services across North America. All these passenger rail services run on existing freight lines using freight-compatible rolling stock. There are examples close to home. The West Coast Express is a commuter rail service between Mission and Vancouver in British Columbia. Morning services operate into downtown Vancouver, with afternoon and evening services back to Mission. The service operates on the Canadian Pacific right-of-way using CFR-compliant freight-compatible rolling stock. GO Train operates in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. Officially started in 1965, it was approached as a test, but recognized to be a permanent service with the Lakeshore East and West services. Over time, services were expanded to a total of 7 lines. Today, the GO Train is being enhanced to regional express rail, with electric trains, all-day service, and expansions to London and the Niagara region. We're looking for a letter of support from the community in order to move this project forward, to secure private investment and approach the provincial and federal governments. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you very much, Thomas. It's very detailed information. I'll report this time to council if there's any questions. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thomas, we didn't get a introduction. Could I ask for an introduction and who you're representing in this presentation?
So I'm Thomas Fryer, I'm a civil structural engineer. I'm from the UK. So in the UK, we're used to catching trains all the time. And when I moved here, I worked on a project that overlooked the Canadian Pacific rail lines in downtown Calgary. I noticed how few trains there were running on that track. And I just thought, why isn't there a passenger rail service in Calgary? So I did some research and looked at what was happening, what the history was, and set up and created Alberta Regional Rail to try and establish a passenger rail service in Alberta.
Supplemental?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thomas, are you aware of any studies that have taken place in the past involving the provincial government and private businesses for a high-speed rail system between Calgary and Edmonton?
Yes, I'm aware of all the studies. The first study I think was done in the 1970s, and the latest study was done in 2014, but therefore high-speed rail. And it is my belief, in my opinion, that we need to learn to walk before we start running. And a regional rail system would be the initial start point for passenger rail service in Alberta. So we start with regional rail, and then that can get expanded to express rail services that stop at limited stops, and then gets expanded further to high-speed rail. And I believe that is the proper progression. I don't think we should be starting with high-speed rail, and that's why I started Alberta Regional Rail, to advance passenger rail, a regional rail network, prior to advancing to express rail and high-speed rail.
Thank you.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dole. Through you to Mr. Fryer. Can you tell me, I noticed in your presentation that we have within our council package, it says that the trains would run along freight tracks corridors owned by Canadian Pacific Railway and CN. And have you had any discussions with either one of those groups before putting together your presentation?
Yes, I first started talking to Canadian Pacific Railway almost 5 years ago. And we've had continual discussions with people in Canadian Pacific Railway. At this point in time, we haven't approached Canadian National, because our aim, we want to serve the principal towns and cities in the corridor, and all the principal towns and cities are predominantly along the Canadian Pacific right of way.
Momental, Councillor Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Dole. So just to follow up on that, now I know that there's quite a lot of train traffic on the tracks that we have currently. What has been the opinion from the CPR with regards to of accommodating additional traffic, or are you actually looking at trying to build a second line right alongside?
The ultimate aim would be a second line, would be to effectively twin the line that's existing. So you can have a greater capacity of trains. So instead of having, as it stands at the moment, I think the capacity is for 32 trains a day. A twin rower line would increase that to about over 250 trains per day. And that would be the aim. Canadian Pacific, through their discussions, they don't want to see any impact to their freight operations. And I would like to see an increased frequency of trains. So we both want to see enhancements to the rail track, to twin the line, to get a greater capacity, to prevent conflicts. So a train doesn't have to wait for a train coming from the opposite direction. So you have a dedicated northbound line and dedicated southbound line.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Thomas, for your presentation. It's very interesting. And although I support the concept of this, I am curious to know what impact this would have on our municipality. We would have to have a place where we'd have to provide some kind of a train station, some type of parking. What impacts would that have to our municipality, and what costs would that come into our municipality?
At this point in time, we're looking at solely as either a private investment, fully private investment, or through a public-private partnership model with the federal government and provincial government. At this point in time, we're not actually looking for municipal funding. We're not asking for any municipal funding, and the aim is to, hopefully we don't need to apply for any municipal funding, but we're still at a very early stage. This is just introducing the concept of regional passenger rail. In terms of the stations, we would consult with the municipality into an ideal location that the municipality thinks they would like to have a CS station in place. We have our views of where a station should go. The municipality may have their views on where a station would go, and we'd go through a planning process to figure out the ideal location. In terms of size and funding, again, we're looking at it as a private investment. Principally, it depends upon what land is available and what zoning would need to be changed. So these are all really discussions for a later date. At this point in time, we're only looking for a letter of support that the community supports the concept of establishing a regional rail service in the Calgary-Edmonton corridor. We're not looking at this point in time for detailed discussions on exact station locations.
Okay, are you done, Thomas?
Yep.
Okay, before we go to Councillor Wilson, I notice you speak a lot about P3 partnerships or federal, province, etc., private. I have had a request from the Mountain View County Reeve to put this on the agenda for the municipal area partnerships. I'm not certain if you're aware of that. That is 6 municipalities where we sit together around a table. And can I ask you, have you been to the Mountain View County Council at this point?
Yes, we've had discussions with Mountain View County.
Have you made it around to, oh, you're here in Olds now. Did you make it to Disbury, Sundre, Cremona, Carstairs, the other partners to the municipal partnerships?
We are presenting to Didsbury tomorrow.
Thank you. And I don't know if I'm out of order by asking you, but the concept, I agree with Councillor Blatz. It's almost futuristic and quite acceptable if you're looking at it that way. However, speaking, have you entertained any costs at all of what this project might reveal for money?
Yes, I've done a full cost estimate. I've actually done various cost estimates for various service scenarios, ranging from a very limited service through to the full twinning of the entire corridor and having a train every hour at off-peak times and up to 20 minutes during peak periods. At this point in time, I'm not willing to divulge specific financial information because I have put a lot of time and effort into it. But as in the presentation, you're looking at about $7 million a kilometer to twin the entire line. So the line is 305 kilometers long. So you can equate that as you see fit. Or for a basic service, you're looking at about $25 million per station. And depending upon how many stations would be installed, that would give you a rough idea of the cost.
Thank you for sharing that. And who was over here? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. I just have 1 or 2 questions. One is, and perhaps you've answered it already, just wondering where you're at as far as support from either the Alberta government or the federal government, or have you not really gotten to that stage yet in terms of memorandums of understanding or even just a blanket statement of support?
At this point in time, we haven't approached the provincial government formally. We've been speaking with some private investors, and what they wanted to see, they wanted to gauge the local support. So that's why we initiated this process after the municipal elections last year of communicating and meeting with and visiting all of the municipalities, all the communities, all the towns and cities within the corridor to introduce the idea, to gauge the level of support, and to ask if they would provide a letter of support for the concept of regional rail in the Calgary-Edmonton corridor. Once we have a substantial number, and we have a dozen or so far, or letters of support, once we have a substantial number from the majority in the corridor, then we will be approaching the provincial government more formally. We'll be approaching Alberta Transportation to obtain memorandums of understanding on other items.
Councillor Ryan? Sorry, we had a supplemental from Counselor Wilson, then Counselor Ryan.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for that answer. And just one last question. I don't know where this is at, but just doing a little bit of reading, there seem to be some competing ventures or multiple ventures expressing interest in this. It's a topic of high interest, you know, whether you're talking an Edmonton Calgary corridor or the corridor Calgary to Banff. Just wondering, as far as those other competing ventures go, what's the difference from your company, your initiative, to some of those others? And is this kind of a race similar to the race for space in terms of who can build it first gets there first, or not necessarily?
The Calgary Banff rail project is between Calgary and Banff. Their extension at the moment is only as far as the airport, the Calgary International Airport. So they're not coming up the corridor, as far as I'm aware. And I've had communication with them, but they haven't considered us. They haven't told us to cease and desist with our project. So they're going between Calgary and Banff. Our aim is to connect all the communities in the Calgary-Edmonton corridor, going north-south. Also, Prairie Link, a high-speed rail service, would not service any of the rural communities, any of the smaller towns and cities within the corridor. High-speed rail would only service Calgary, Red Deer, and Edmonton. It would not service any of the towns and cities in between the major urban centers. So it's not really they're not even a competitor to us, because we're serving a different market. Our aim is to connect all of the communities within the Calgary-Edmonton corridor, not just Calgary and Edmonton, all of the communities within the Calgary-Edmonton corridor.
Thank you.
Counselor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dole. Yeah, I just wanted to say I do appreciate the concept of doing a regional rail. I grew up in Ontario and took the GO train, and my mom actually took the GO train every day to go to work in downtown Toronto from where we lived. So it is convenient, and they do get use. My concern, I guess, would be, having the population and the users to make it viable. However, I noticed on your presentation, you were looking at 10 round trip trains scheduled to run every day, weekday between, and then you've got Innisfil to Lacombe, Olds to Calgary, Pinoca to Edmonton. I would suggest that if you were going to look at extending up to Lacombe, that you would include Olds to Lacombe and Olds to Calgary. The thing is, we do have a lot of people in this community that go to Red Deer for appointments and might be able to use it. So you would need to, obviously it's very, very early in the game, but I would suggest you might want to take a look at that scope and see exactly where you would be servicing. That would be my comment.
Yes, and as I said, we're still at initial stages, so I've done a detailed design of the entire corridor. Service patterns will vary. A proper feasibility study would provide us with the detail to identify where people are actually traveling from and to, where the most frequent destinations are, and a timetable can be devised from those findings. They're just examples that you see on the website. Ideally, there'd be trains going from Calgary to Edmonton, and they would stop along the way. There wouldn't be a dedicated service from, say, Olds to Calgary. It would be a train that had come from Edmonton that had stopped in Olds and then was continuing on to Calgary. So there's still a lot of initial service scenarios to go through, but the idea is to serve all of the towns and cities throughout the Calgary-Edmonton corridor.
I certainly concur with Councillor Ryan and probably most people around the table that we have centers that have hospitals and colleges and universities, and mostly end up looking for travel, and students as well. At this time, I'd ask, does administration have any questions for Thomas?
No, I think it's still early. One of the thoughts I had is in regards to if this is going to be used for employment purposes for people to go back and forth for that, with hope that it would connect up to transit centers and other, at least in the major cities anyway. So nothing worse than landing in the city and then having to get a taxi or whatever that should be associated with public transit so people can easily and affordably get around in the community that they would be commuting to.
Yes, a principal design aspect of the plan is to have transit-orientated development. So we're not going to stop at Calgary Airport and then hope people can get on to downtown Calgary. The aim is to have a station in downtown Calgary. Same on the other end in Edmonton. Our aim is to have a station as close to the Alberta legislature grounds as possible so that we can connect into the government center LRT station that's right nearby. The whole goal is transit-oriented development so that people don't need a car and they're not reliant on their cars. They can quite happily catch a train and be able to catch for public transit to further destinations. I would also propose, let's say, a further thing from when we presented to the Pacific Northwest Economic Forum, that a professor, a teacher at Olds College could catch the train down to Calgary International Airport and then catch a plane to almost Seattle. And then from there, catch public transit and be able to go to a college or university in Portland or even somewhere in between. So you can actually have a possibility of not needing a car on any kind of travels, or even catching the train to catch a flight to go to Cancun in Mexico.
Well, we certainly don't want to miss our Counselor Daly, who happens to be a professor at a college at this time, but thank you for sharing that. Just one last question. Have you received letters of support yet from my colleagues from municipal area partnerships, any of those municipalities, example, Mountain View County? Because my thought was we could, after discussing this with my council as a whole, and receiving your presentation, which was very informing, we could do it collectively together, as you'd have six possibly. Have you had any letters of support yet from any of those individuals?
Not within the communities within the Mountain View County area as yet. We have received letter of support from the Samson Cree First Nation, the Aminskin First Nation, from the city of Wetaskiwin, and from the city of Leduc, and also the county of Stettler as well. So personally, I think I'd prefer to have an individual letter of support. I would have to discuss that actually further with my associates and my partners within Alberta Regional Rail. At the moment, we've been looking for like individual letters of support. So we will be looking for a letter of support from Mountain View County itself. So let me discuss that with Vern and the others, if you would like me to get back to you on that.
I would like you to do that because in the past and perhaps today as well, the municipal area partnerships with 6 municipalities has had better opportunities with the provincial government when they see us collectively all supporting each other. It's more of a collaboration, but please do. And we certainly look forward to hearing back from you. And if there's no further questions from our council here, we will then move forward to accept your presentation. If that works for you, sir.
Okay, yes, thank you, Mayor and Council.
And thank you for your time. I would ask for a motion, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council thank the Alberta Regional Rail representative, Mr. Thomas Fryer, for presenting to council and accept the presentation for information.
I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried, and look forward to hear from you in the future.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Bye. Had lots of talk about rail in the last decade around this table. All right, we'll move down to business arising out of minutes and unfinished business, item 4. Seeing none, no, we have no bylaws. We'll now move to new business and we'll go with new business 6A from Councillor Wilson, update plan on the disposal of assets. Mr. Mayor, who would speak to that?
I'll start and then I'll ask Director Lindeman if she has anything to supplement. Our intent is to basically dispose our assets and to basically have them sold on the market. While we're still using them, such as our salt and sand shed, we still have a product inside. We'll be continuing to use that until it's basically all utilized, and then it'll be going on sale once we get an appropriate appraisal conducted for those other buildings. Director Lindeman, anything to supplement?
So I was just going to add, so we currently do have the one parcel that is up for sale. It's been advertised on social media and in the newspaper. That closes January 28th. And then after that, as far as the process, we would bring forward to council for approval. The MGA regulates how municipalities handle the sales of land, so it is quite regulated.
That would be the old fire hall.
Yes, that is correct.
That's correct. Anything further to add for anyone? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to clarify, so in the example of the fire hall that is up for sale, are we utilizing any third party to assist with that sale, or is it simply on the town's activity?
So we engage legal to come up with a sales package, and then it is just a purchase bid process. So they'll come in, and then legal has provided us with a contract agreement. I did email all realtors in town as well that have a business license, so they are aware of the package out there.
Like to add anything to that, Director Andrew? Okay, you're looking very seriously when Director Linderman's talking. Yes, okay, very good. Does that answer your question or supplemental?
Supplemental, thank you, Your Worship. And on the other two properties, I believe there are three in total. So the other two, and CEO Merritt, you referenced the one property. Any idea on the timeline there as to when those would be up for some type of sale process, bid process?
I don't have a specific timeline. It will be in 2022, but I do see Director Wagstaff.
And one of the reasons that we proceeded with the first parcel was it was zoned appropriately, so it was ready to be moved. One of the things in discussions with Parkland Community Planning Services is that they've identified, as has our development officer, sorry, just drew a blank there, which staff member had said this. The development officers also noted that it's going to come before council to consider the zoning in that area before we move forward in disposal of that asset.
Good, thank you. All right. If there's no further for item A, we'll move to item B, and the item is town office holiday hours. If you wish to add anything further, go ahead. All right, Mr. Merritt.
Okay, those hours were really set about last January for many purposes. Basically, with Christmas, Boxing Day, and New Year's falling on weekends, we put those days that are considered holidays in lieu and put those for Monday and Tuesday of the following week. And with New Year's, we, instead of putting it to the Monday of the following week, we put it to the Friday. Also, the town has a floater day. And so that left 1 day gap. With the budgetary process being concluded, I consulted with council and made a decision to create a second floater day so the staff would have a full week off. A lot of things went into consideration for that. The fact that basically, if you recall, Christmas of 2020, not a lot of people got to travel. We were in lockdown, kind of many restrictions. We fully expected 2021 to be a much more travel-ready year, so to speak. And so it was with in mind our fact that we received we had a wage restriction. We felt that this was a good bridge for staff to have the week. In regards to customer service, we had a few closures during the COVID period of time. We always made arrangements that business could still be conducted while the office wasn't open to the public, so either through phone, internet, or Dropbox. And we well advertised our basically holiday schedule, so people would be fully aware of what the days were that we would be off, and that they would be able to conduct business without being able to enter the town hall to get their business done. So it was a well thought out process, and we basically made those decisions back in December, January of 2021.
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, CAO. Thank you, your worship. So just to clarify, so then going forward, the second floater day or flex day remains for 2022 as well?
There has been no discussion in regards to it, although the same circumstances kind of are in place in regards to the Christmas and New Year's being on a weekend. That would again leave us with the possibility of having just the one day. And personally, I would like to see that take place, that the week would be off. The province who we conduct a lot of business with do close down for for that week. So, and a lot of the other municipalities do as well.
So am I to understand that that is not in policy today? That is through discussion with council only?
That is correct.
That help you? No, we have no further new business items at this time. I'm going to, yeah. Thank you. She's very good. So I will entertain a motion then to accept those two items as presented. Councillor Walsh,
Yeah, I would move that those items that were added to the agenda be accepted.
questions? Those in favor? That's carried. I'm sure our recording clerk got those two items clearly. She's very good at what she does. Moving on to item 7, reports from council boards. We have that at the end of the month. So it is going to be now our quarterly financial position update, quarterly. Director Linderman to provide comments on the items presented.
Thank you. So first, I would just like to apologize. Normally, the third quarter financial update to September 30th would have come to council in November. This did not happen this last year. So today I'm presenting a little out of sync. Today is the financial update to November 30th, as that was the most up-to-date accurate data I could provide at the time. So as you can see in your agenda packages, at 92% of the way through the 2021 fiscal year, the operating budget is 71% spent, while the capital budget is 72% spent. Again, invoicing does lags. We are still receiving invoices for November. So it is not 100%, but I will, going through, there is nothing out of the norm. Everything is quite under, as I said, at 71%. If you look on Schedule 3, there is the one area, which is disaster services, that is showing 128% spent. This is due to COVID spending. And then under parks, we are at 112%. This is the parks master plan. The revenue for that has not been recorded, so it will be an in and an out there as well. I would open it up to any questions then from council.
Seemed really easy for her. Any questions from council? On that particular point, she's going to continue. Machine. You're done? Okay. Were there questions? Are there questions from what we read in our agenda? That's what I'd like to say. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I was just wondering if Director Lindeman is going to speak to separately done to the elected official portion, the remuneration.
Sure, I can. So that as well is up to November 30th. I'm just going to get over to that. So this one is done a little bit differently this time around, just because there was a change in council. So I did a summary. The first page you see is a summary, which includes all councils throughout, all councillors and mayors throughout the year, and tied to budget. The second two pages are, we have from January to October 26th, which is the change in council. There, I've just provided the year-to-date actuals for each individual counselor, as it is hard to tie new council to an old council's budget. If that makes sense, there was changes in boards and committees and such, so you can't compare the two. But if you could look at the summary, you'll see, again, you would expect at this point to have 8% remaining. We are under budget with the mayor at 12% remaining and council at 16%.
I would like to just add, because this has been in the past, and I know it's been in with past counselors as well. I'm not sure if our public understands, but this is really not the true picture. This is our costs. But we also appoint members of council to boards, committees, and commissions. So there's the fees that they get paid outside these dollars. And that's something that they work very hard on, but we don't really hear about. So that, I just wanted to add that because it's been a lot of discussion in the past in councils that I've worked on. And unfortunately, when I came on in October and our election was so late, I look forward to actually reviewing this with council at our organizational meeting, because I do see that we have some counselors that are working on 3, some none, and some 1. So it's just clarity, and also to be clear to the public of how we work. Thank you. If there's any further questions, Councillor Ryan and then Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Mayor Dole. I just wanted to double check with Director Lindman then. So the remuneration up until November 30th, then includes this 78,000 that was for October 26th to the November 30th. That's all included. So we're still below budget, even including the huge amount that we totaled up in the October to November series because of all the training that had to be done and all that. We're still under budget.
Correct, yes.
All right, super. Thank you.
Mr. Cummings.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. So I've been approached over the last couple of days by several members of our community with some numbers that they're presenting on our budgets here. And it took me quite some time to help them figure out what they were looking at. So the big difference that they're seeing, and the reason why they came to us, to me anyways, as a counselor, was our numbers show quite a bit of information, and it's very detailed. And we also include report differently than other communities. And one of the numbers that they were pulling up, and they were saying that we were just making so much more than our counterparts in other communities, is the numbers that they were getting from other communities were just the honorariums. And they weren't separating in their financial reports all of the other things like per diems, the registration, travels and expenses and stuff like that that we do. So it makes it look like we're making a lot more money than our counterparts. And I've heard that spoken of here in council chambers as well. And it's not accurate. So I wanted to ask a very simple question here of administration. And I've looked through the MGA and the associated regulations, and I can't find anything about it. So maybe they have a better understanding. Is there a specific and very detailed process outlined somewhere about how municipalities must report these sort of financials, or is it simply up to the municipalities themselves to create the reporting process? It just seems a little convoluted when all the different municipalities report these numbers differently.
Would you like to speak to that? Thank you, Ms. Linderman.
So the only specifications that I'm aware of is on our financial statements. We need to report all of anything that a counselor receives, including registration and travel is included, but that's just one line item on a financial statement. As far as this detailed information, it is in our policy that it will be presented quarterly, but it didn't specify the level of detail.
Cummings.
Thank you for that process, and I appreciate it because it's very I've seen letters in the letters in our newspaper. I've heard counselors talk about it. I've heard these citizens are coming to me saying, oh, you guys make so much money. And I've tried to explain that to them, that every municipality reports their numbers differently. And the numbers that they're looking at aren't necessarily the same apple that we're looking at. It's an issue that I'd like to address more formally. At the provincial level, I think that that's something required. So I'm going to, I don't know if this is the right form to say it. I've already reached out to our local MLA to try to get some sort of change to the MGA that every municipality has to report the same way. And I want to say that simply because they mandate that we do a citizens review of our remuneration every 4 years. And even that, the information the municipalities report is very different from each other, and it's very difficult for those citizens to do that from a personal experience. So I just want to let everybody know that that's something I'm looking into. Thank you.
I think that would have been very good information to share with council as a whole. And then we could have all had input in that for sure. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to clarify for Director Linderman, so within, as you said, the audited town financial statements, when it indicates compensation benefits for mayor and council and CEO, that is the total compensation picture, correct? That includes per diems and any registrations paid by the town, the honorarium and everything else, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and as you said, I don't know if that's mandated by the MGA or whatever, but presumably, and I know you can't, and I don't expect you to talk to other municipalities, but other municipalities' audit financial statements, statements in theory should be reflecting the same composition of data, right? So on honorarium plus per diems, anything that's paid by the town to the councillor.
Correct.
Okay, so that would be an apples to apples comparison.
The only different, there's a caveat there. Monies received by a counselor from commissions that they sit on would not be included in the town of Olds. It's on the commission's financial statement.
Right, thank you. So again, in my case, I'm on the Water Commission, paid directly by the Water Commission. So we don't reflect and pick up those numbers in any of this reporting, which I think was Mayor Dahl's comment.
Yes, I would like to say that all the dollars that are made for the year from the members on this council that work on commissions and boards other than the town of Olds are only reflected in their own, unless they decide that they want to share. They don't have to share. The councilors don't have to share what those dollars are, but they do budgets once a year, yes.
Yes, thank you. I thought that was just me.
It is on our website for anyone that would like to take a look.
And if I may, so again, just to reaffirm Director Linderman, so when I look at that sheet for the town of Olds, and if I'm so inclined, when I have spare time to look at that sheet, those audited statements for other towns, in theory, I should be seeing an apples to apples comparison of total compensation.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions then? All right, we have the financial update recommend. I would ask for a motion then. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the financial report for the 11th month period to January 1st of 2021 to November 30th of 2021 be accepted for information.
Thank you very much. Are there any further added questions before we vote? Very good. Those in favor? That's carried. Well, that was a lesson. We'll just move forward on correspondence and information at this time.
Your Worship.
Yes, Councillor Daly.
Would it be appropriate at this time to send out a compliment to the administration of the town and also the managers of the budget. Seeing that we were projected at a 92% spend at this term, and we are below budget in our numbers as we sit January 1st.
Absolutely. It's always appropriate to to be able to compliment our administration and the work they do.
Thank you.
So-
I think,
Duly noted.
thank you.
We'll move forward then for correspondence, item 9A. As we briefly discussed before we moved in to further items on our agenda. We have 4 items, Olds and Districts Hospice Society. I would like to share, it was excellent information, and I'm certain that Councillor Walsh, you're still sitting as chair. Thank you very much for that information. That was a lot of work put in there, but you've got good staff going on now, and are you full complemented?
Yeah, this is developed by a communications committee and it's mostly all volunteers.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. The National Police Federation, they've given us information, and then quite a few of us around this table will be sitting on a listening to some more information. Is that correct? In February?
That is correct. What's going to happen in February is the province is having a engagement sessions with municipalities to basically indicate how they are going to talk about policing into the future for the province. So there has been a PricewaterhouseCoopers report that has been formulated, and so the issue is whether there should be a provincial policing versus the RCMP. And what this National Police Federation letter is indicating their support as the union for the RCMP.
Very good. And the other 2 items, one on the REP protocols that was sent in for your information, asking us to let council know, and the Métis Nation of Alberta. I'm very happy to see that they've done a lot of work this year, and they certainly deserve some recognition as well. Does council have any questions to any of these correspondence? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion, please. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Worship. I move that the correspondence and information report entry ending January 10th, 2022 be received for information.
There's no further questions. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to be dealing with our closed session of our agenda. So I have some notes that I'd like to share with you, please. As council goes into a closed session meeting, attendees have 2 options for continued participation in the virtual council meeting. You may click on the leave button or leave meeting button and leave the meeting, and then watch our Town of Olds website and Facebook pages for live updates as to when council will return. Administration will post when the meeting will reconvene, and the meeting attendees are able to rejoin the virtual meeting at that time. Or you may stay online in the virtual meeting platform, and administration will move all meeting attendees into the meeting waiting room while council is in their closed session. Once council has returned, all meeting attendees in the waiting room will be brought back into the open meeting forum. With 3 different FOIP sections, I am going to suggest one motion to move into the closed. And I would ask Deputy Mayor Wilson to go ahead and make the motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the council move into closed session in accordance with section 197(2) of the Municipal Government Act to discuss matters exempt from disclosure under the FOIP Act at 2:18 p.m. January 10th, 2022, with CAO Merritt, Directors Andrew, Greco, Linderman, and Wagstaff, along with Legislative Clerk McKinnon, to remain in attendance for item number 1, section 17, and number 2, section 27, and item 3, section 25. And only council will remain in attendance for item 4, section 17.
Now, do we still need to have Mr. Fox? Okay, you can deal with it in a different area. Thank you very much. All right. I think we've got everyone. Okay, are we back on? Thank you very much. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dole. It is my opinion that item number 4 should actually be discussed in public. The issue that is dealing with this is typical of being held in public, and I do not believe it needs to be, it is disclosure harmful to personal privacy.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I will.
Sorry, and Mayor Dole, I would also suggest that we separate that item out for a separate motion to be held.
Well, thank you very much, but this disclosure is harmful to a personal privacy. And if we would have to take a vote and we would have to remove it from the agenda if we all approved it. Or this is harmful to personal privacy without getting into the details, but I will ask council to make that decision. There's 7 votes at this table. And I'm going to put it on the table because I would ask that council remove this from the agenda if that's the case. Councillor Cummings?
I'm leery of making a vote on such a decision since we have no particular understanding of why it is considered to be a FOIP issue. Maybe when we go into closed session, we can have a better discussion about what it is that administration believes that this is a FOIP issue. So that, because I agree with Councillor Ryan, I don't see anything in here that's FOIP. I may be wrong. I may not have the right information, but discussing the right information in this room is not appropriate. And I'm not willing to make a decision on whether it is FOIP or isn't FOIP until we can have a discussion about what administration considers this to be FOIP. So I don't think it's appropriate to have a vote now. I think it's a discussion while we're in closed session, and we can, if we decide not that it is not a closed session issue, we can bring it back out in public afterwards.
Well said, Councillor Black.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I concur with what Councillor Cummins has said, and I would suggest that we have the part of the conversation in a closed session and then the remainder in an open, transparent, public forum after that. Thank you.
Absolutely. It is definitely a FOIP issue. And so at this point, will remain the same. All right. We are going to call for the vote for closed session. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. That's passed. We will now go into our closed session. Welcome back. Welcome back to our audience. We are now on item 10 on our agenda, appointments of public at large. And these public at large appointments will be for our Olds Municipal Library. I'd ask Councillor Wilson, if you would please make that motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. Make the motion that Curtis Cook and Jeff Tashumi be appointed to the Olds Municipal Library Board, OML, for a term of 1 year to expire at the 2022 organizational meeting.
Any further questions? Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And also we have a request for decision for council appointment. I would ask Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'd like to put the motion out that council approve the appointment of Councillor Harvey Walsh, to the Alberta Municipalities Municipal Governance Committee for the 2021-2022 term. Alberta municipalities will cover the per diems and expenses to attend necessary orientation sessions and meetings as required to fulfill the member commitment.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. Does council have further questions? Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now furthermore, before we leave our session with you today, we have a special tribute. We have a special tribute for a past library board member. Miss Linda Awesome was a council-appointed member of the Olds Municipal Library. Sadly, she has recently passed away. On behalf of the Town of Olds elected officials and staff, we extend our heartfelt condolences to Linda's family and friends, and are grateful for people like Linda who volunteered their time to enhance the quality of life to our community. Bless you, Linda. I would ask at this time for a motion for adjournment. Councillor Daly,
I move that we adjourn.
Council, we're adjourning at 4:05. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you for your attendance.